Hey guys, it's Kyle down here at Lunicycle. Today I'm going to talk to you about the initial setup on any of our Rockshox bikes. Now all of our Rockshox bikes come with the Rockshox Yari fork. It's an air fork, which means you use a little shock pump and it threads into this tiny Schrader valve here to add or release pressure. It also comes with a high-speed compression adjustment right here. It's on the top right side. And also a rebound adjustment. So tightening up the compression is going to add a little bit of resistance when you're riding. It'll stiffen up your fork. Opening up the compression will leave the fork wide open and as free as it possibly can. And when I'm talking about rebound in this video, I'm talking about this little red knob on the bottom here. And when I say I'm going to speed up the rebound, I'm going to be going towards the little rabbit. And if I'm going to say I'm going to slow down the rebound, I'm twisting it towards the little turtle there. So we're gonna bring in our rider and we're gonna get started on setting up the suspension on the new X2 with Rockshox. All right guys, so we're about to set up the suspension on our brand new X2. The reason we're setting this up is because if you have your suspension set up improperly, the bike's not gonna be fun to ride. If you set it up properly, the bike will feel great. And it's very simple. All you really need is a shock pump. In fact, if you're buying a bike spring 2022, we are setting up the air in the front and the rear for these. All the large bikes are going to be set up for about a 200-pound rider. The mediums will be at like for a 160-pound rider. And then we'll go ahead and set up the smallest for probably about a 140-pound rider. But if you already have your bike and you want to play with your suspension, this is how to do it. So we're going to go ahead and bring in our rider. We got Ramsey here. He's wearing all his riding gear and we just weighed him. He's weighing 180 pounds. Now the front fork is extremely easy to set up. Rockshox spent all the time. They made a nice little chart right here, which we'll go ahead and put that chart up on the screen right now. But the chart says for a rider 180 pounds, you want to go to 85 PSI. Now, with your shock pump, you don't want to just air it up in more than increments of 10. There is actually 2 air chambers in here. So when you add air, you need to then go ahead and cycle the shock a few times to let the air go down to the tiny negative chamber in the bottom. Now all of this is hidden, you can't see any of it in the fork. But you would never want to air up in more than increments of 10. So before he even gets on the bike, I'm just going to set it to what Rockshox recommends. So right now this shock is at 70, so I'm going to go we're at 80. I'm going to cycle this. Go ahead and get the last few PSI out of this. And then fine tune it to 85. Now, unless you have a fancy shock pump, you're going to lose a little pressure when you let this valve off. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a few little more pumps, just because I know I'm going to lose a little bit of pressure with this style shock pump. So I'm going to unscrew it as quickly as I can. But you're going to hear a tiny bit of air leak out. Only very high-end shock pumps have a secondary valve that you release, and those ones don't lose any pressure at all. Now, in order to set up the rebound properly, you want the compression knob fully open. And the easiest way to set up compression and rebound is to go ahead and squeeze the front brake. When I release it, I want to make sure the front wheel doesn't lurch forward. If it does lurch forward, I'm going to slow down the rebound, usually 2 clicks at a time, until the wheel stays nice and planted. So, see how this wheel is jumping forward like that? I'm going to go down to the red rebound knob and turn it towards the turtle. You need to do this until the wheel stays planted. I believe there's about 20 clicks of adjustment on this fork, so we'll probably end up a little bit towards the slower side. Almost there, one more click in there. right, so it looks like we got our front fork set up. I'm gonna go ahead and have Ramsey hop on the bike. We're gonna cycle it a few times and see how it feels. So Ramsey, you can hop on the bike. I'm gonna support it for you. You're gonna wanna get up in your full attack position, which will be, go ahead and put your hands on the grip. Now go ahead and cycle this a few times. And then just dead weight. Now try to get off the bike without wiggling too much. All right, so right now we ended up at about a sag of just under 30%. For an enduro bike, you want about 30 to 35% sag. And we'll go ahead and set that up on the rear too. They make it real easy on the rear. You can see you got 20, 30, 40%. And this little Sag Meter will help us set that up properly. So I'm pretty happy with the fork. Let's go ahead and set up the rear. Ramsey, go ahead and get on the bike. Let's go ahead and bounce it a few times. And then just dead weight. Now try to get off the bike forward to where we don't compress that ring anymore. It looks like you're just above the 30%. I may actually let a little bit of air out of this shock. And then we'll go ahead and set up the rebound. Now on the X2 version, you do have a lockout adjustment. You can see this little indicator here. So when this lever is down, your compression is wide open. When it's up, it's locked out. When you're setting up any of the suspension, you want these open. Now the exact same is true for rear shocks. There is a positive and a negative air chamber. So if you're letting air out or adding air to this guy, this one was almost set up perfect, so I'm only gonna let a little bit out, but you still wanna cycle it. And that's gonna even out the two air chambers. All right, Ramsey, let's go ahead and try this again. I want this red line to end up just below that 30% mark. That's usually how enduro riders set them up. Some guys will go all the way to 40%, but for the initial setup, we're just gonna do right around 30. All right, and just dead weight. Let's try that again. I think you put your foot on the floor. All right, dead weight. And go ahead and hop off the bike. So Davis, if you can get in here and you can see right underneath that is a little 30% marker. So I'm happy with this sag for now. Now I'm gonna show you how to set up the rebound. Now rebound is always a red knob, except for some weird exotic forks where they use different colors. And again, you have a little rabbit and then a little turtle on this side. And it really is the same setup. I'm gonna compress the rear and let it jump back up. And I want the rear wheel to stay planted. So this one is actually a little slow, so I'm gonna go ahead and turn it towards the rabbit, speed up this compression a little bit. A little too fast, so one click slower, and I think we'll be all set up. All right, so Ramsey, I'm gonna call this a good static setup. Now, static setup means we get it not on the trail. Most riders who own a shock pump will bring it with them, and they'll notice, oh, I'm taking some big hits, I wanna stiffen up my suspension. So you would just add a few PSI front and rear. You can get it set up for exactly what you wanna do. In the following video, I am gonna show you how to add tokens or remove tokens. Tokens are included with all of your X2 bikes, and we're gonna make a quick video on how to install and remove those. So anyone can do it. All you need is a shock pump, and you can get out there and tear up the trails.